Thank you everyone for joining us, listening in. We're excited to have you here. And thank you both, Angela and Joelle, for joining us today. I think one of the most beautiful things about working in our field of finance and leasing and having done it for the past 25 years is we've met so many amazing people from such a variety of industries. And so one of our goals this year was to celebrate that quarter century by bringing in some of these wonderful individuals that we've met over the years and talk about their experience and history and what that 25-year mindset looks like. And I don't think we could have picked a better first guest. So Angela, I'll turn it over to you. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, Justin. Thanks for setting this up with us, and welcome, Joelle, and to our guests online. And for those who might be listening in the future, I'm Angela Armstrong. I'm the president and founder of the Prime Capital Group. We offer commercial equipment financing solutions to business owners that are looking to scale and grow, become more productive and more profitable. And along the way, as Justin has so aptly suggested, we get to meet some enormously fantastic, deep thinking, risk-taking entrepreneurs who are scaling their businesses in ways that are so varied. Every business that we encounter is different in a multitude of ways. But what they all have at their core is a kind of a grit and determination that's really hard to explain. We thought we were doing not a good enough job explaining that, and we should really be doing it through the voice of some of these people. And so in our 25th year anniversary period, we're going to celebrate these people. I'm excited to invite Joelle into this conversation because she is somebody that I've met over 16 years ago. We met on a referral from a mutual contact in Calgary, Alberta, who said, I met somebody and I think you do a thing that might be able to help her, but I don't really know what you do and I don't know what kind of help she needs, but I just think maybe I should connect you guys. So we got on a call, we ended up in a long conversation, we had a coffee meeting, we talked about the business and we figured out whether there could be some opportunity to go forward, but that wasn't the meaningful part of it. The meaningful part of it was Joelle said to me, so how do you get your business support as an entrepreneur? Who are you turning to for solving challenges and soundboarding when you're really in a low spot or when you're going through turbulence and change? And she said, I joined a group out of Calgary called Women Presidents Organization. You should come sometime and check it out. And I said, hold on, you drive to Calgary, every few weeks for a 3-hour meeting. So you drive there, have a 3-hour meeting, and then drive back. It's a full day for 3 hours worth of value. It must be worth your time. So I went to that, and then the rest is history, and we can get into more of that. But Joelle is a serial entrepreneur. She's worked in the corporate world internationally and North America wide. She and her partner own a series of franchises in the California closets world. I would say exemplary model of what to do in that space, but that doesn't mean it's always been a smooth path. And we're going to hear a little bit more about that from Joelle. So Joelle, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself in your own words?
Yeah, well, thank you, Angela. When I got the email, I was like, how can I say no to such a wonderful friend and colleague over the last 16 years? I mean, again, joining WPO and having a network that can support you through your highs and your lows is just one of the most fulfilling things that you can have, right? And people who actually experience the same things I experience as an entrepreneur is so critical. Myself, I'm one of the franchise owners for both Edmonton and Calgary, California Closets. We call it California Closets Alberta because we cover the whole territory. So I like to represent the entire territory that we work in. I kind of fell into the business about 21 years ago, and it's been nothing but just a ride through the whole journey. And I've had a ton of learnings, a lot of growth, a lot of highs, a lot of lows, a lot of tears, a lot of celebration. But at the end of the day, I I find such joy in what I do and how we do it and how our people take care of the customers out there today. And I just very excited to share that experience with others if that could help them too.
Let me riff off one of the ideas that you just shared, which was about the joy of problem solving and helping your customers. So I imagine that if you find that inspiring to do that kind of work and you derive joy from it, that was part of the reasons why you got into this kind of a business versus all the other choices that were out there in the world. I know you've traveled internationally, you've worked internationally, and when you came back to Alberta, you decided that you had enough inspiration to start a business. But why this industry? What is unique about this industry, California Closets? And maybe you could describe just at a high level what it is for the few people out there that might not already know the brand.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So California Closets is we do custom storage solutions. So it could be in a closet, a pantry, a mudroom, the garage, media units, wine units. We basically design custom cabinetry pretty much in the whole home with the exception of we just don't touch kitchens. Lots of people in those spaces. And how I kind of got into the industry, it was kind of my partner at the time was running a sister franchise. It was a painting franchise, and we were just trying to find creative ways to get more business. And we thought, well, if we could paint the closets, maybe we'd get the rest of the home if we did a good job. So we approached the owner at that time, and it was funny because he was like, "Well, actually, I really want to sell my Edmonton location. Would you guys like to buy it?" And it was funny because we didn't have a lot. We had no money to our name at that point. And to your point, I had just got back from traveling. So I was like, wow, if I'm going to commit, I better be
no
sure
more traveling for a while.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I better be sure this is what I want. So I said, okay, let me come in and do some sales for you. Let me see what this is about. And then if that's good, then we'll negotiate to buy the location. So I fell into it, and 3 weeks later I was like, we're buying this. Hands down.
Wow.
Buying the business. Yeah. And I think what really resonated to me is, I had made the sale, and California Closets, it's funny, like people, it's, some people say, well, it's just a want, but after you've had one system done in your home, it becomes a need. But I sold my first closet, and I went back the next day after it was installed, and the customer excitement. I walked in, and it's crisp, it's white, all her things were put away. There was a home, and her joy and her excitement. I was like, oh, I just got chills, and I was like, I want to do this. I want to make people this happy. And so that's, I think it was a done deal for me at that point, just because of how excited the client was and what it did for her and how it made her feel. And so it grabbed my attention, and I was hooked, and I've still been hooked here 21 years later.
Well, it's a tremendous story, and to go from what I heard was kind of a try it before you buy it, but you didn't have to try it very long before knowing it was the right thing for you. I think it's so interesting what you said, because I think a lot of business owners struggle through the sludge, right? You're in a marsh, and even the teams, and think about the tumultuous times we're in right now. It can really feel like a slogging exercise to get through operational day-to-day things, and death by paper cut kind of, I have to fill in all these forms and get this work done. But connecting to the outcome is what thing is changed on the planet because we're doing this work. And for some people, they might say, well, that's not a closet. What I want to do is I want somebody to walk into a beautiful garden and feel a moment of Zen. That's the outcome that they're chasing. So for everybody, for entrepreneurs, I think, to be inspired to start a business, if you're not connected to that ultimate outcome, it will be hard to go through the tough times. And I know for a fact that, like every business owner, your business evolved. Give me that was then, this is now comparison to what was the nature, how it started, how it's going. What was it like in that first couple of years? And then if you can contrast that with how you've arrived to the place now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I remember the first 2 or 3 years being crazy, crazy chaotic. It was, high growth. You're as an entrepreneur, when you're that small, I started with 4 people, and then quickly grew within 2 years, less than a year or two, we had 10 people, and then we're at 15, 20 people. You're growing, and you're wearing, as a entrepreneur, you got to wear a lot of hats. So I had the marketing hat, got an installation hat, I had the ordering the product hat, I had, so a lot of hats. And so a lot of times you're just running around and just switching all 10 hats and which one is on right at this moment.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, just to deliver, right? And so and you're just, and I'm still in those early days really close to the customer. And again, that outcome of delivering an incredible experience, an incredible product that people could be proud of still 20 years later, right? And so doing that today, when I look at the evolution of where I am today, there's 60 employees in the business, and I'm not necessarily seeing clients. I don't now, but my, as an entrepreneur and a business leader, my joy of serving and making things better and solving problems, it just transferred to my people. So how do I help and support my people to achieve the goals that they want, which is all geared towards they do what they do because they love the outcome of seeing the consumer happy. So how do I, as a leader, clear the barriers for my people to succeed? An example I'd give is just yesterday, we brought a group of 8 people into a room, and they've been struggling for 2 or 3 years with a current issue. And I just facilitated through a problem solving exercise for the team. And by the time we got to the end of 6 hours, there was excitement because they felt like, we've now got a path to figuring out how to solve it. We were able to just, break it down into a smaller bite sizes, and their excitement when they left the room that they now can build plans and build goals around that and actually see improvement, that brought me pleasure and joy. And so just, again, it's about, if I can clear the barriers and make them successful, that will translate into the field with our customer too. So that's how it's changed for me over the years.
So still joy in the outcome, but the outcome has shifted because it needed to. But that meant that as part of your recruitment strategy, over the time, as you've grown, and I want to go back to that, how it started and those trigger moments that helped evolve the business. But when you're recruiting, keeping in mind your experience of that joy outcome and how that drove you, do you think that is different for a business owner versus the team? What's the level of importance that the team, you can find a way to connect them to those joy outcomes or have that sense of contribution to the great outcomes?
Yeah, I think value alignment is the most critical thing you have to have. I think I've always felt very strongly that when you hire, you need to know your values, your company values, and your personal values, and you need to hire to those values, right? And you need to, when things go well and when things don't go well, you have to look at it through the lens of values. And when you do that and you hire people that are aligned in your values, it happens organically. Like you're not having to force people to want to do well because there's alignment there. You're not having difficult conversations about why you should deliver on time because maybe that's one of our values. Like we deliver what we promise, right? And so I don't have to fight with someone in my business on that because that when we hired, we ensured that was kind of part of their DNA, right? So it in order to get that translation and that buy-in, I think also as leaders, we have to be willing to be vulnerable and let them into what's hard for us as business owners or what the challenges are, because it's amazing how many ideas they have and they want to see success. Like yesterday in the room, there was way better ideas from the team than from me. So, I mean, they, when you just give them the opportunity and allow them the voice, and they will a lot of times find the right path to deliver the right thing for what we're trying to do for our customer.
It reminds me of when our business was much younger as well, and we were hiring more for skill sets because as you talk about wearing the multiple hats, the challenge of having a small business is you do need people that are nimble and can wear multiple hats. But the opposite is true by and large. When you have a larger business, you're really focused on more subject matter expertise. How did you make that transition happen in the business where you were able to continue to assess over time the needs of the business and kind of monitor the need for more specialists versus generalists in the business?
Well, I would say, so looking at it's, as we grew up, it was more about bringing in leaders or like managers that could start to oversee. So all the key roles in our business are still the same today as they were 20 years ago. We still need those same individuals. I think, it's about for me, it was about how do you pick or select or develop the right leaders along the journey to be able to lead those variety of roles as we grow up, right? And I think, even the people that we had, like I think about a couple different roles we have where the leader at that time was the right leader, but 5 years later they didn't necessarily have the capacity or the ability to take on the new technology or to take on the new equipment, or and then we could try to skill them up. And it's always what we believe in, always trying to skill people up first and foremost. And if that doesn't work, then finding another opportunity within the organization. And if that doesn't work, then there's a conversation about maybe it's not the right role or the right fit anymore. But as we grow up, it's the key leader roles, and those are it's a lot of work to develop people and make sure that they're treating each individual the way I would want to see them treated, right? So I think for the business hasn't overall for us, it's changed and products have changed, but it's all the same. But it's all about people and leading people and treating people well and helping them develop.
I love what you said about developing from within, because if you've already got somebody in the business that does share the values and is exemplifying them, and also maybe mentoring and supporting team members with that same mindset, then you become more than the sum of your parts, right? It's the business is able to transition or transcend the limitations of one leader. Like it can do more, and it probably does better. As you suggested, it's lovely to hear that you have these facilitated sessions and that the ideas come out of it are going to be much bigger and better. That's the message, is for, I think, other business leaders, especially those in startups where they say, I can't do it all. Say, yes, that's true. You can't do it all. And you have to find a way to release and relinquish different responsibilities in the business when you've got the right people on. And you know that there's a fit in the values and also the path to those outcomes, that you share those same things. So important. Clearly, you've done a good job on that because you've been incredibly successful in the business. When you go back to that initial point, when things were chaos, what was one thing you did that really contributed to clicking over into less chaos, more scaling potential? You said you grew rapidly, but there had to have been a point where you said, the chaos is not serving us anymore. And everybody that's ever started a company understands how that happens. And even when you're going through periods of turbulence or significant growth and challenge, you also get that feeling of chaos, which can be a deterrent to people that want to work in an environment where there's consistency and continuity and stability, versus people who love that sense of adventure. And they might go from startup to startup because they just love being the part of something that's going to be a future self rather than something that already is its future self.
Yeah. I think it's the it's the idea about teaching someone to fish versus handing over the fish. I think in those early days, there's times as an entrepreneur, you're like, it'd be easier, faster if I just do it myself. But that doesn't serve anybody. So, taking time and just side by side with your people and coaching and mentoring and teaching them what you're doing along the journey so that they can then take the reins and do that. And I just remember I would there, it would mean sometimes I had people coming in my office. It was nonstop for 8-9 hours, and then I'd have to do my work late at night to get my stuff done. But I am where I am today because I took time to coach, teach, mentor, and get them to a point that they could take things over so that I didn't have to do every single hat, or I didn't have to. But it at times it's easy to say, no, I'm just gonna, it's way
Just needs to
faster.
get done.
Yeah, it's faster to just say I can do it, and it truly is easier to sometimes to just want to do it, but you have to fight that urge. And I know it's sometimes hard for entrepreneurs to let go, or I've heard other, like, even I talk to other franchisees or other business owners, like, well, they won't do it the way I do it, or they won't serve the client the way I do. And I'm like, you got to find a way to take that institutional knowledge or that knowledge that's in your head and bring it into either a training program or into paper, or like somehow find a way to pass on that knowledge, because you cannot scale and grow a business, and you will plateau if you don't learn how to develop people and get them to take over for you. And then at the same time, to get to the next level, you have to be developing yourself. If you don't develop yourself and get ahead of all your people, then how are you supposed to lead them to their next level, right? So that's been always my philosophy, and I recognize that really young in the process, that that's what I had to do, and it meant sometimes a lot of extra hours, but today it's completely worth it.
So just like you're spending time supporting, coaching, training, and I completely agree, it is really difficult to do, especially when you're in that growth phase. But if you think about the hours you're doing the thing yourself versus consolidating those hours into building a tool or some kind of a plan for somebody to follow, you're just trading the same dollars. So it might feel more efficient, but it's sort of it's a fraudulent efficiency, if you were. So if you go back and again think about that decision you made to say, I know now I need to train and curate my people. That's my highest priority, so that I can give them the tools they need and the knowledge they need to be super efficient and super effective. Then I can create space for myself to do other things. What are the other things that you end up doing in your business when you're not in the day-to-day?
Yeah. Well, I do spend a lot of time reading business books, so stuff like Patrick Lencioni. I mean,
Good
yes,
book, by the way.
yeah, yeah. He has a big series that help you. So I do spend a lot of time reading and listening and learning, and then going to see other people speak. Also working on the business instead of in the business. So spending time building plans, like just thinking about like doing data analysis. So I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, and don't get me wrong, I love to work with my gut instinct, but one of the things that my corporate experience really brought to me is the power of data. And in order to really take time you need time to sometimes to collect the data or to piece it together and then read it and understand it. And a lot of times, if you do that well, it can really drive your business in a much deeper and a much better way. And I do believe that, now I have this combination of using data, but also that gut instinct to run a business today. And I didn't have that when I first started, but I never would have gone there without combination of working with a corporate team that they, they really believe in using data, but also by developing people and finding that, giving myself more time, it allowed me the ability to spend time on that stuff, which again is working on the business instead of in the business.
So when you talk about data, I think of that as looking at all of the outcomes of the business and then trying to find correlations or causation, this leads to this, or X plus Y equals M, and it should be equal Z, and it doesn't. Why is that going on? Start to understand that that's not, that seems to be very contrary to your gut. So do you ever find that there's times where the data is telling you something, but your gut is telling you something else? And how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, it can be hard, right? Like we were just in a room yesterday where we had this issue and we put a lot of data on the table, and a lot of people, like it's understanding what's a feeling and what's an actual fact, and then you need to test it. So and it's hard as an entrepreneur. You just want to run. Like we don't have a lot of urgency. We just want to go. And sometimes you need to slow down and test, like test and try things, and be willing to fall down, and be willing. Sometimes if I know there's, right now we're talking about something that we're like, we don't know if it's actually doing what we want it to do. And the conversation is, we should maybe shut it off, test it. And everybody in the room's like, whoa, that's scary.
Oh, how
right?
do we do
Like,
that?
Right. So, I mean, there's a lot, we haven't made a decision on that, but I mean, that's kind of the conversation. Like, how important is that? How important is it for our data to be right? Or do we say, okay, let's continue to go with our gut on this,
Yeah.
and continue to do this? Or do we really want, like, so it's like understanding, okay, doing a bit of analysis, like what's the financial impact? What's the impact on our customer? What's the impact on our internal customer? And doing a little bit of analysis to say, okay, we're okay going with our gut because it's not good. The restrainers or drivers are not going to hurt us, but in this scenario, it could really hurt us, and we don't want to do that. So I think, and that's you kind of have to actually go through a little bit of a business case scenario run and that's so against sometimes our gut instinct, wanting to just run by your gut instinct. I would say, like, the other thing about gut instinct, one of the things, hiring, when I was younger in my career, it was a lot of gut instinct, and then I've made some poor hiring choices over the years.
Haven't we all? I mean,
From-
because you don't know you've got your own blinders on, but you don't know what they are.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think one of the things I've learned to blend a combination of that. Yeah, what does it feel like in that first 5 minutes with that individual? Do I connect with that individual? But now I use tools and techniques in interviewing, and a team to interview. Like it might be me and a couple others, so that it's a more structured approach, so that we make sure that the gut is truly right. And I think that's a really great example of how you can go with your gut, but do we want to backpedal when the hire, we've seen how the incorrect hire or the misfit hire doesn't do your business any good. So you have to learn to find tools that can test and appreciate your gut instinct, that can solidify the two together.
Yeah. I think that talks really aptly about the nature of business. It's both an art and a science, and you've got to combine the two things. I read something interesting lately, or maybe I saw it online on a video, I can't recall, but it was about the difference between interacting with people this way and interacting, and I'm talking about in a virtual environment, which we've had enough of, maybe too much of, since 2020, the year that shall not be named. And there's signals that people give off, like biochemical signals that we give off to one another in a room, whether they're good vibes or bad vibes. And the thesis of this investigation, this scientific research that was being done, was whether people give off fear signals to one another. In other words, if somebody's got that spider sense that's going off in a room with another person, that everybody else will kind of get that caution signal. But that is completely evacuated when you're in a virtual environment. There's no biochemical signals, and we are biological creatures. So I always wonder about the impact of that net. Have you noticed changes like that, like the flight to digital that we've been experiencing over the last
Yeah.
few years? Your business is very tactile. You're doing evaluations of clients' homes. You're communicating with the homeowner in their private space, which is very a reflection of them and very special to them, important to them. You're trying to solve a problem and bring joy as an outcome.
Yeah.
But do the clients now want to be more in a digital space? Do your team want to be more in a digital space? And how has that changed your business?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, when COVID hit, we all did what we had to do and we did the pivot, right? And we did work, we did absolutely do virtual, but I'll tell you, our consumers have all moved back to preferring to be in person and to be able to touch and feel and to have someone in the space. And it is an intimate space. When we're talking closets or an office, it's the home, right? And so being in person is so important to understanding how to create and collaborate in a way that brings peace in the home, right? And so in person definitely makes a difference. I mean, we were already as a business, we're very, we still worked very virtual or not like in before COVID in the sense because our design consultants are in the homes on their own and then they'd come in for a sales meeting once a month, right? Or installers are kind of out there day to day, but not with their team. And I think
Right.
one of the things that we did before COVID and we now continue to do when the restrictions lifted, we actually shut our business down for one day every quarter. We bring the entire team together and it is critical from our perspective to have a space to laugh, to learn, to remember we're all
Yeah.
people, that we're
Yeah.
all friends, we're all our goals are and our intentions are all the same. And so we do that. I mean, I think about the business problem that we're working on yesterday. It's been a couple years and it's kind of been since COVID that we've had this business problem. And we hadn't this group of people that they don't normally get together like this particular group of functions and we put them in a room and wow, we had some great aha moments and light bulbs. And I think we're really like, I think the team is really going to move forward and solve and move the dial on the issue that they saw. But it wasn't until we got them in a room where they could spend time talking it out, hearing each other, understand the frustrations, understand the barriers, and then able to then say, okay, we've got the information and now we can start to think about problem solving now and coming up with solutions. So yeah, I do
Thank you
believe
for
the in
sharing that.
person. Yeah, the in
Yeah.
person is critical. I mean, it doesn't you can't don't have to be always, but I think the like you said, body language, I'm vibrant as you can see. I run my hands everywhere. But you read I mean, 70% of communication comes from body language, and you don't always see it on the virtual, especially when cameras are off.
Well, and it's hard to pay attention to it when there's a lot of people where if I'm at even in a board meeting or in some kind of a group meeting where I can look around and kind of pay attention to one person, but it feels weirdly intrusive when you do that on a video call, if you're just kind of looking at one person. There's a very strange thing that I think people still need to wrestle with. And maybe there's a room for, the virtual meetings with the goggles, like we've seen a variety of companies try to implement, has other kinds of fallouts. But so if I can go back to one of the things that I think lots of people wonder about, and there's a company that's doing hosting these events called the Epic Market, and right now they're hosting these events which are it's like failures in your business, right? So what Meltdown Monday, I maybe called something like that. I'm sorry that I can't remember the name, but it's where you can kind of come together and be vulnerable. But lots of times what I hear from business owners and people in all walks of life, because it can happen to you in your personal life as well, where the biggest change that happens in your life happens after a failure. And I think if we go back to the first moments we're on this earth, there's a feedback loop of what works and what doesn't work. If you never try anything, like if a baby never tried to move, they would never experience the bruises of trying to move, but they would never learn to move. So I feel like the same is true when you're running a business. it's the times that you try and you
Yeah.
fail. And one of my favorite books is the series by Jim Collins, is Good to Great, and then there's Great by Choice, which I like even better. And it talks about testing, and the thing that you said about, he has one called Fire Bullets Then Cannibals. You got to trial your theories in a small, non-existential way to see if they're going to take you out of the knees, or if you might have just found your next great product or service mix that's going to bring even more joy to your clients. And I think about those moments of failure. Is there one you can describe to us that was really a catalyst for you in the business?
Well, it's like which thing to choose, right? Because failures happen
A
all
lot,
the
I
time.
know.
Yeah, they
I
do
know.
happen, right? I mean, I think any failure, I think just a lot of business owners have tenacity, and you fail, and then you just figure it out, and you just pick yourself up and you keep going. I think, you know, oh, I'm struggling to figure out a specific example to give you, Angela.
Well, I can tell you my experience with going to some of the peer groups that I've been introduced to through you, and then in other groups, some of the biggest hurdles that we have are ourselves. And you've already alluded to that, saying, I can teach my team what I know, but I can't teach them what I don't know. So what are the things that you've invested in that prevent you from having failures, that you're always having to be a little bit ahead of the curve. You know where the
Yeah,
team is now, that's the now. But
yeah,
what are you doing to control the future by
yeah,
getting yourselves in that headspace? Because that's what we're here today talking about.
yeah,
This 25-year mindset. How do you get there? And it's by always casting yourself into the future in some way.
yeah. Okay, so I've got something here. So one of my largest failures actually was when I was working at the corporate team level actually, and it was through COVID, and I'm naturally a very trusting person, and I naturally trust what people tell me. And of course, one of the challenges we had through COVID is when you can't operationally get in the field with a team, you can't always know what's happening. And one of the things that I did was trust my leaders in a way that, but not verify or ask enough questions from different angles to ensure that what they said they were doing was actually happening. And it was a huge failure. Like this business, when I was finally able to get on a plane and go into that market to work with that team, the business was devastated. It was, the people were just, not in a good place. There had been a lot of attrition, and everything that that leader had told me they were doing, they weren't doing. And I think, it's easy sometimes as leaders to, and especially if you're trusting, or you're wanting to move on to the next thing, it's easy to sometimes just think, oh, it's good, it's great. And so I think you either have to have tools
Also,
and
there's this, right?
yeah, it's a little bit ostrich down in the
Yeah.
sand a little bit. So you have to have combination of metrics that can raise flags for you. And
Facts, right? Tell you
yeah, and
facts.
yeah, facts and flags so you can see. So once you have the right set of data set, you can see it in the numbers and it flags. But the other thing is, don't be scared as the main leader to just pick up the phone and call your, like, talk to your installer or talk to your, your frontline person. Just because you have a couple layers between you, you should actually continue to check in with your key field team all the time in a casual way, and it allows you to confirm what your key leaders are telling you. And sometimes it's really easy for owners, they're busy, to say, oh yeah, my leaders, they got this, it's fine, there's no problems. But I think at the end of the day, the buck stops with us. So we have to be checking in with the front line. And I think for me, that's the lesson I've learned is trust but verify, and also just always check in with the front line, because you're going to know really quickly if what you're being told is actually happening, and sometimes it's not deceitful. Sometimes people think they are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then when you check with the field, it actually didn't translate the way you've envisioned as a leader. So it's
Right.
not even about like someone's being devious about it. It's just that maybe it didn't translate all the way to the front field line the way you had hoped it would. And so I think, again, it's our job as leaders to always trust but verify, and always assume best intent, but always go and dig deep and ask a lot of questions around stuff, and again, key KPIs that raise flags and data to make sure that you can see something and be able to dig in a little bit deeper when you need to.
Frequently, because I think a lot of people wrestle with this, especially as their businesses are scaling and growing, is putting time into the hindsight versus working in the moment to fulfill, operational tasks versus working in foresight. And I know you and I have had some board experience, and we always talk about that insight, hindsight, and foresight. What thing helps you decide the cadence of that check-in, where you can look at the hindsight, which is your data that tells you what's already happened. It's too late to change what happened in the past. The insight is what conclusions can you draw from what's being done now, and then what's coming down the line at you, what big rock is tumbling down the mountain at you, or what nice plateau is ahead of you that you can enjoy some great business growth in. What's the cadence of checking that information? How do you do that in your business?
Yeah. So one of the exercises that we do, and I'm sure other entrepreneurs will appreciate this one, but we actually do some exercises with all our teams on every quarter on start, stop, continue. So literally we're like, okay, here's the category, here's the area. What should we continue to do here? What should we stop doing? What should we, start doing, right? And so, I find at least a quarterly cadence of checking in with your team on a lot of that stuff. And I think as a leader, getting down, I'd say at least quarterly, that you're getting down to the front lines and doing some what I call cross training, like getting in the field. Like I mean, we hear all those shows where the person goes, the guy at the top comes and works in, a burger joint with people, but really it's getting out and being on the front lines with your team, and just understanding things change. And I'll just tell you, like, again, I'm going to reference back yesterday to the exercise. What was really interesting in the room was to see that processes and some elements had changed in COVID. And here's the deal. They were the right decisions at the time, but today when we got together in the room and we started talking through some of that stuff, they're not the right decisions today. They're creating barriers today. They weren't creating barriers then, and it was correct, but now and so here it is a couple years later, and we probably could have caught this sooner if we got into a room sooner. So it's, you don't realize, sometimes you think, oh yeah, we're tight, our customers are happy, we're getting the surveys, it's good, and then there's a number that was flagging and we weren't attacking it, so we finally attacked it. And we, like I said, we've got some low-hanging fruit, and the team's excited, and they're going to get going, and all of a sudden we're going to solve it, and I know that number is going to go up. I know the team can do it, so it's really good.
Would you say it's fair to say, and we've talked about the art and science of business, and what I'm concluding from some of what you're sharing is that both have a place, because the feeling of something not being quite right could be actually, if no one can describe, they're just going to say something sort of generic to you, or sometimes people say everything is broken. And really, this is a sense of overwhelm coming from, we're just not moving the needle on efficiency, or we haven't stopped to look at that worked 10 years ago when the business was smaller and you had a nimble generalist putting on all the hats, and they're really happy in that role of being a generalist and having so many hats to put on, because it gives them the spice of life, that variety. But when you move the business along and you need somebody that's more of a specialist in a particular role, when they have that, they're conveying that feeling of chaos or whatever the word is that would appear to that person to describe the situation, that could in fact, the feeling could be the flag that the data should be investigated, and kind of maybe that will flush out the source of the problem that you can then tackle. I love what you said, trust but verify. We use that all the time, that phrase in our business. Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you say that's a fair thing? A feeling could actually be a flag that something else is going on?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. A lot of times, like, and especially because and entrepreneurs are like this. When I get into the field with a team, I know, like, I can feel it. Like, just talking to people, their body language, how they communicate. I know automatically, and they may not say it, but I can tell, right? And so that that gut instinct will allow me to then dig in and ask a lot more questions. And I
Right.
think that's what I mean. Like, if you can read people, or if you can just get that sense of lack of energy or energy from people, then you start to like, oh, there's something here and I need to dig in. And for sure, like, you see it, right? And it's true, when you grow like over 20 years, you always have to come back and double check your processes, because things change, or the environment changes, or the customer changes, or you've added new roles and you didn't take time to do a roles, and like, are the right functions with the right person. You have to redo a lot of those exercises. I can't tell you, I think we've probably redone the functions role like exercise probably, I don't know, like 10, 12 times over the years, because you have to do it, because sometimes you can't see it unless you can feel it, the tension, or it's not working, or it's bumpy, or someone's overwhelmed and others are not. And until you run that type of exercise, you won't actually figure it out. So you can feel that, you can feel the bumpiness, but you've got to run some exercises too, and then you start to see it. You see it on the board and on the paper, right?
Yeah, I really resonates for me what you're saying, because the business changes every single day. And it's sort of like, I've heard families with multiple children, you get the family that with 3 kids, and they say, well, the family that the first child came into is a really different family than the third child came into. Not even to mention all the other kind of variables between individuals, but that third child is having an experience that the first child never had, and that the middle child never had. And that experience is different for the entire organism of the family, that entire group. And so I think the same holds true for a business. And the people that had that institutional memory of, we're all generalists juggling hats and we just love lobbing that ball back and forth
Yeah.
across the room, is very different than somebody comes into your business and says, but we need definition and we need clarity, because we can't deliver with excellence, and that's important to us. But it's a wrestling match, because it's in continuity, that change is occurring in the continuity of the business.
Yeah.
How do you know when something big is shifted outside of the business that's going to affect your business? How do you watch for those signals? And we could use this economy as an
Yeah.
example, or we can talk about, COVID. I know you guys went from thinking, wow, we might not sell anything for a while because who's going to let us come into their homes, to being busier and having some on record years. But I certainly couldn't have written that projection by any
Yeah.
stretch.
Yeah. So, so I would take right now as a really great example. I mean, it's interesting. I think our name, California Classics, actually is posing challenges for us today here in
I was going
Canada.
to ask you that. Yeah.
Yeah, it does pose a challenge. And so, we could see, right when Trump, made the decision on tariffs, a month ago or so, we pivoted fast. We've been working to change our marketing to make sure we get out there in the marketplace, letting consumers know that we're actually a Canadian owned company and that we locally are Canadian owned and operated, and that all our employees and the majority of our product is actually purchased in Canada. We have always wanted to shelter from the United States, our customers from and ourselves from the currency fluctuation. So we've made the choice to source in Canada for the whole 20 years. I mean, there was times when we did buy from the States, but we've always, even if a new product came out south of the border, we spend a lot of time sourcing locally. So, I mean, right now we're really working to communicate out to the public that we are proudly Canadian. Our teams are all Canadian. They love what they do in our products. It's all made here in Canada. And so, when these changes come, and will it be hard? Yeah. And I keep referencing our activity yesterday, just understanding how to serve the customer better and getting a room problem solving when these big challenges occur, and communicating with your teams, like being really open and vulnerable. Like we're in the room, and before we started, I said, hey guys, everything came down today. I know we got this meeting, but what's going on? Like, how you feeling? Like letting them, and they're scared. Like the team is scared. It worries them, and they're worried about costs, and they're worried. So you have to, as a business owner, allow time and space and the ability for people to vocalize that, and then you got to support them to run with you. And what I know about what we do is we will continue to just, every time a major shift outside happens where it might impact us, it's where we get ourselves in a room and we talk it through and we problem solve. And if we don't have the knowledge, we'll bring the experts in to talk to us and give us information. And then how do we take that to incorporate in what we do and how we do it, and can we do it differently? Yeah, or better. And again, it's always about how do we serve our customer, and that's both internally and externally.
Well, I love that you're able to explain the fact that California Closets is actually, like most franchise business, has a local business owner who owns a home in the community, lives in the community, hires employees from the community. And what's, I think, something that a lot of people don't know about the Alberta organization that you run is that you do your own manufacturing.
Yeah,
So
we
you
do. Yeah.
early on invested in that to try to improve productivity, make sure you could control the costs, like you said, understanding the risk of fluctuating inventory and supply cost, and really the challenge of even getting product delivered to you with freight costs kind of being all over the place the last few years. I imagine that that's helped you be sustainable. So on that note, I think that's something that I've always admired about you, Joelle, is you're always thinking about what are the big things, those macro events that I don't have any control over, and how can I de-risk those? So manufacturing yourself was one of those choices you made a long time ago. Are there any others that come to mind that people might be able to take away a bit of a nugget on?
Well, yeah, so just, again, we wanted to control, I think even controlling the sourcing of our products, right? Like that's a huge thing. Because again, when we can do, the risk becomes high when products are transferring across borders and stuff like that. So again, really diversifying and looking at vendors right across Canada that can support us. Manufacturing, also marketing, really being dialed into marketing and pivoting on what that looks like based on changing times. I mean, many years ago, we were in newspapers, right? Today we're on TV, we're in radio, we're on podcasts, we're in YouTube, so it's, we're always trying to think, where are our consumers, where are our vendors, where are, and I think the other thing is banking and financing is huge. I'll just, touch on the fact that when we bought our equipment, we weren't a business that people wanted to touch. Like the banks were like, yeah, we're not giving you money, even though we were doing fine and making money. Maybe not a lot at the time, but we were figuring it out. And I just, to have valued partners like yourself, Angela, that step up to the table and listen to our story and just you bought into what we were doing and how we were doing it, and you became a valued partner. And I think sometimes entrepreneurs and sometimes businesses don't value they think about maybe their frontline customer, but they don't always value their vendors. And I think really building your relationship with your vendors is so critical, to ensuring that when times are tough, they step
Right.
up for you, like they
Yep.
always do. When we bought Calgary, we had owned Edmonton and we bought Calgary and brought the two businesses together. It was kind of a disaster a little bit. And what happened was is we had a lot of the same vendors, and they knew we were going to take over the business, and they were excited about that. And we just asked them for a lot of leeway, and we promised them we would take care of them, and we did. It took us a bit of time, but we took care of them. And because we had built those relationships, they trusted us, and it took 8-9 months, but they knew we'd come through, and we did. And so I think just you de-risk by building great relationships with whoever touches your business. It doesn't matter who it is, if janitor, the cleaners, the garbage guys that take your garbage. It doesn't matter. You need to build great relationships with everybody that comes in touch with your business, and that takes a lot of risk away all in itself.
Well, it's funny because business is so much about the transaction, and we've got financial statements that show us how well our transactions are. What we don't get is a relationship report card, which I think would be really interesting. I don't know how you would accomplish that, but if you had a relationship report card, that would really be the synthesis of what you just described, which is the trust that you build over time and the reciprocity. And in other words, maybe there is a supplier that's 1% cheaper, but are they 1% less likely, because they're cutting rates, to be able to be there to support you through tough times, or to step up when you have an emergency? And I can't tell you how many times our partners and vendors and suppliers have really been able to help us wrestle a really tough problem to the ground, but it's only because the reciprocity was there for years before that. And it's not, you don't put a dollar value on that. It's not transactional, it's trust-based, and it's on delivering what you commit, right? And every time you do that, and that seems to be an attribute that goes a little bit by the wayside when we go into a digital virtual world where everything is for sale, everything's a commodity. But I can tell you, it's embarrassing to admit that I've tried buying that beautiful leather bag online, only to find it never got outside of some province in China. Not talking down about China, but bad actors who exist everywhere in the world, versus going to a Poppy Barley, for example, a beautiful Canadian producer of quality goods.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
and going there and buying the same thing, maybe for a little bit more, but now there's a relationship. They know I'm a client, and then I'm getting the good quality product without the risk. I think that makes a big difference. But that relationship report card is ephemeral, and it's hard to write it down. You can't add up the value of it. You just know it when you need it. So really good advice on that. I know we're getting close to the end of the time you were able to give us today as well. So I want to go into a quick rapid fire Q&A session, if you don't mind. So we're going to go to a couple of quick questions. First thing off your mind: favorite pizza topping?
Cheese.
Cat or dog?
Dog.
Favorite podcast?
Smartless.
Oh, that's a good one. I love that one too.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, it's so good. For those of you got to go listen to it. It's fantastic. Morning or night person?
Morning.
Favorite activity to do when you're not working?
Pickle.
We
Or
share
travel.
travel. Okay, so on that, favorite vacation spot?
I don't have one. I love going everywhere, somewhere new all the time.
We need a whole other podcast for all of the backpacking trips that Joelle has taken, some solo, some with the family, and going all around the world with nothing more than the clothes on their back. Like literally, if you want to know how to pack light and travel light, Joelle is your person. Last question, and this is a hard one. if you weren't a business owner and you could have a parallel life, what dream job would you want to do?
Well, I would love to be on a sailboat. I'd probably want to be a chef or a sailor on a sailboat because I've always wanted to just live off a sailboat.
It's such a great answer, and I would have had no idea that that's what you said. So good to learn that. It's good to learn it. Better late than never. I'm just going to quickly invite if there are any questions from anybody on that's watching. And thank you so much for joining us today, Joelle. It has been a fantastic experience to have this catch up with me. And I can't tell you how proud I am of the success that you have had. And I know how hard you've worked. And I know all the things you've had to pay attention to over the years. And I know that what looks like success when somebody sees the business in its fullness, they don't know the story, the journey of the sleepless nights and the dark moments and the hard questions when you're looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, do I really have what this takes to do this the proper way? And I can say unequivocally, you have what it takes, and I can't wait to see what you do next. I'll leave it here. I don't see any questions from our audience, but I know we're at time. So it has been a privilege, and I continue to look forward to seeing what you will do next.
Yeah, thank you, Angela. I can't say how much, I can't even express in words how much you've supported me, our business, and everything we do. And I'm so grateful to have you both as a wonderful partner and friend. Thank you.
Aren't we both lucky?
We
and
are.
That's how businesses should be run, with really good friends and partnerships. Justin, turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you to both of you. That was such a lovely discussion. I know I learned a lot, and I got a new podcast out of it too, so I can't complain there. I think with especially with International Women's Day around the corner, I think it's so important that we amplify strong women, and I think we picked two amazing top tier female entrepreneurs. So I think this is going to drive a lot of value for young women and people everywhere. I know I learned a lot as well. So thank you once again to the both of you. And thank you to everyone who joined in, listened live. I hope that was nice for you and you learned some things. Feel free to check out California Closets at californiaclosets.ca. Check them out on LinkedIn as well. Give them a follow. And if you have an extra click, feel free to give Prime Capital a follow as well. But once again, thank you to the both of you, and hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thank you.